So last class we have got an introduction to the first chapter, which is basically to understand the problem. The chapter is named as Arjuna's sorrow. Basically, the problem what Arjuna faced is what all of us face, and that problem we understood as samsara. Now samsara again consists of three diseases, as we can say. The three diseases are called raga, which means attachment, shoka, which is sorrow, and moha, which is delusion. So this is the basic human problem which all of us face, and that's what Arjuna faced, and we can identify with his problem. And the solution is what Lord Krishna is going to provide in the Bhagavad Gita. Then we started with the first verse. We will chant the first three verses once again. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta mamakah pandavaschaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. Sanjaya uvacha društva tu pandavanikam vyudham duryodanastada acharyamapupasangamya raja vachanam abravit paschaitam panduputranam acharya mahatim chamom vyudham drupada putrena tava shishyena dhimata. So we had looked at these three verses in the last class. The first verse is where Dhritarashtra asks his minister Sanjaya, who is a witness to the whole proceedings, you can say a live commentator, what was happening on the war front. So that was the first verse, and Sanjaya replied that Duryodhana approached the teacher Drona and said something to him. And the next few verses are actually what Duryodhana speaks, though it is not mentioned as Duryodhana uvacha, but it is implied that the next few verses it is Duryodhana addressing Drona. So first verse, he wants to provoke Drona because he has a feeling that Drona's mind is not fully into the war, because his favorite disciples are there on the opposite side. So that is why instead of approaching Bhishma, who is actually the commander in force of the Kaurava army, he approached Drona and addressed him just to provoke him. He asked him to have a look at the Pandava army, which is led by Drishtadumna, the son of Drupada, brother of Draupadi. And as we know, the enmity between Drupada and Drona, and Drupada was insulted. Initially, Drona was insulted by Drupada, and then Drona took revenge. And Drupada again wanted to get even, so he performed a yagya, and through that yagya, the son Drishtadumna was born to him, whose mission was to kill Drona. So that is why Duryodhana provokes Drona, saying that on the opposite side you have Drishtadumna, the son of your enemy, but he also is a student of Drona. So Duryodhana wants to convey this Drishtadumna has learnt everything from you, but now he is going to use that same thing to kill you. So by pointing out all these things, Duryodhana wants to provoke Drona and ensure that Drona is fully committed to the war. So that is what the third verse. Now the next three verses are the verse 4, 5 and 6. Duryodhana assesses the Pandava army. He looks at, maybe like before any battle, we always assess the enemy. So what are their strengths? So he was just trying to get an idea, and by addressing Drona, he was just trying to make Drona aware of the people who are in the opposite army, the army of the Pandavas. So the next three verses are going to reveal the names of a few of the big players, as we say, in the Pandava army. So we will read those three verses together, because they are just the names of a few warriors who are in the Pandava army. Atra Shura Maheshwasa Bhimarjuna Samayudhi Yuyudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharataha Drishtaketusche Chetikanaha Kashirajascha Viryavan Purujit Kunti Bhojasya Shaibhyascha Narapungavaha Yudhamanyuscha Vikranta Uttamojascha Viryavan Saubhadro Draupadeyascha Sarva Eva Maharataha. So now Duryodhana looks at the Pandava army and he tells Drona, look at the warriors who are assembled on the other side, who are experts equal to Bhima and Arjuna, and who are great bowmen, who wielded great bows, because those days the bows had names, because they were very sacred bows. Maybe through a lot of penance, these bows were received from the gods. For example, Arjuna, his bow is called as Gandiva. So similarly, each of these warriors had great bows, or in other words, they were great bowmen. They could wield the bow as good as Arjuna. So that is what Duryodhana is telling Drona. And the names of those warriors: Satyaki. Satyaki is a Yadava chieftain and a very close friend of Lord Krishna. The king of Virata. Virata was the place where the Pandavas stayed their last 1 year in exile without being discovered. So incognito, they stayed in the Virata Desha, and incidentally, Virata's daughter was married to Abhimanyu subsequently. Uttara was married to Abhimanyu. Then Drupada, of course, the father of Draupadi and Drishtadumna. And so all these are called as Maharathis. So what is a Maharathi? So those days they had different what to say, titles for warriors depending on their strengths and valor. So a Maharathi is one who can by himself fight 10,000 bowmen at a time alone. He could face them, and not only face them but also protect his horses and his charioteer, because without the horses and charioteer he cannot move. So he had to ensure that these two are protected. At the same time, he could face all these 10,000 warriors opposing him. So such a person was called as a Maharathi. Now other categories, just for information, we can. So between 1 to 10,000, those who could handle, they are called as Adhirathi. Up to 1,000, they are called Ratha. And lesser than 1,000, those warriors were called as Ardharatha. So an army in those days consisted of all these. So maybe the formation of the army depend on what kind of warriors they had. So how many Maharathis, how many Rathis. So they could make a formation with all these people, who should be in the front, who should be at the different positions. So they deployed all these people in different positions. So such among them, the Maharathi is supposed to be the best warrior, and these people who he had named are all Maharathis. Then he named a few more warriors: Drishtaketu, Chekitana, the king of Kashi, Purujit, Kunti Bhoja, and Saibhya. These are another warriors. They are also equally valorous, equally good at wielding their arms, and they had great strength. They were all exalted. Pungava, Narav Pungava means they are all exalted men. So Kunti Bhoja is the father of Kunti, the mother of the Pandavas. Kashi Raja, though he has not been named, is also a great warrior. So he has again named, so again a set of people among the Pandavas, in the Pandava army, who are valorous. And the next verse, he names a few more: Yudhamanyu, Uttamojas, Abhimanyu, the son of Arjuna and Subhadra, the 5 sons of Draupadi, because Draupadi had one son from each of the 5 Pandavas, and all of them were also Maharathis. They were also experts in warfare. So all these were in the the Pandava army, who were men of great valor, Maharathis. Now, what is the purpose of introducing this? It is just to build the atmosphere wherein finally Arjuna, a man of great learning, man who had everything, a prince, ultimately he surrendered to Krishna, asking to be taught. The message of Gita was given to him once he surrendered to Krishna. So it is just to give a build up to reach. So like in a particular time in his life, he felt the need to get this knowledge. So this is for all of us. Probably we come to a situation at a particular time in our life where we feel we need this knowledge. That the thirst for this knowledge, when it becomes more, can be at any point in your life. It may not be in this life. It could have been in one of the previous lives and we are just continuing from there. But some situation which brings out the need for this knowledge, that's what happened to Arjuna. He faced a situation where he could not handle it, and then he surrendered to Lord Krishna, asking him to give this knowledge to him. So knowledge is given only to those who are interested, because there's no point in giving the knowledge to somebody who's not wanting to learn it. So we all come across certain situations where we may feel the need for this knowledge. So that is why all this just to give a build up to the point where Arjuna surrenders to Lord Krishna. So that is the purpose. The next 3 verses, or verses 7 to 11, 5 verses, Duryodhana is now going to talk about his army. Who are the warriors in his army? So basically he is trying, before the war starts, to compare the 2 armies, his army and the Pandava army, just to get an idea where they stand. So by revealing the names of the warriors on each side to Drona, he is just trying to assess his own strengths and weaknesses as compared to the Pandava army. So we will read the next verses. We'll read the 7th verse first. Asmakam tu vishishtaye tani bodha dvijottama nayaka mama sainyasya sangyartham tan bravimite. So again he addresses Drona and says, please make a note of the warriors who are fighting for us. Who he addresses Drona as Dvijottama, that is a twice born. So normally a twice born is one who has been initiated into the Gayatri mantra. So prior to that, the life that he leads is one, and once you are initiated into the Gayatri mantra, it's your second life. So you are twice born, and this is applicable to not only the Brahmins, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, all the 3, except the Shudras. All the other 3 actually are twice born. In fact, as a Brahmana, Drona is not supposed to fight the war. Brahmanas were not supposed to take up arms at all. So Drona broke the rule, because Brahmanas could teach, they could learn, but they could not fight. The fighting was only limited to the Kshatriyas. So by fighting in the war itself, Drona had broken the rule. So that is why Drona is not somebody who can be respected for that reason. Though he was a great warrior, he was a great teacher, everything, but he broke the rule of Brahmins not fighting in a war directly. He was not supposed to take up arms. So Duryodhana addresses him. So let us look at the warriors on our side. That is what Duryodhana tells Drona. Now, who are these warriors? We will read the next set of verses. Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha Kripascha Samitinjayah Ashwathama Vikarnascha Saumadattir Jayadratah Anye cha bahava shura madarthithe tyakta jivitah nana shastra praharanah sarve yuddha visharadaah. Now he introduces the warriors on the Kaurava army, in the Kaurava army. Who are these warriors? The great Bhishma, who is actually the commander-in-chief of the Kaurava army. Karna, again, who was as good or even better than Arjuna in archery. Kripa. Kripa is the brother-in-law of Dronacharya, who again is a Brahmin, who is supposed to be a Chiranjeevi. Kripa is one of the Chiranjeevis. Then Ashwathama. Ashwathama is the son of Drona. Again, he is a Chiranjeevi. Ashwathama was the reason why Drona, he was so attached to him that when that is why the Pandavas used that his blind love for his son as a weapon against him. We know that story where Yudhishthira was asked to tell a lie that Ashwathama was dead, because the moment Drona heard that, he laid down his arms and then he was killed by Drishtadyumna. So Ashwathama, again, he was a great warrior. Vikarna, another warrior, and son of Somadatta. It's called Saumadatti. And Jayadratha, who incidentally again is the brother-in-law of the Kauravas. So the Kauravas had 100 sons and one daughter, Dushala, who was married to Jayadratha, the king of Sindhu. He was called as Sindhu Raja, and he was also he had one of the largest armies, they say, and he was also a great warrior by himself. And we all know the story where later during the war what happened. He was instrumental in killing Abhimanyu, because when Abhimanyu happened to break the Chakravyuha and got in, he was supposed to have been followed by the other Pandavas, but Jayadratha blocked the way and Abhimanyu could not get help. So once he got into the Chakravyuha, then he was killed. So then Arjuna took a vow to kill Jayadratha before sunset, and because Mahabharata is full of stories. So if we continue with the stories, then probably we will get stuck in the story itself, because here we are more interested in the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, which is part of Mahabharata. So Jayadratha. So all these are great warriors, experts in various arms, and not only that, they were all prepared to lay down their lives for Duryodhana. That's what Duryodhana says. All these warriors are prepared to lay down their lives for me. So all these people were in some way or other indebted to Duryodhana. So he had great confidence in them. The next verse again we will continue. Aparyaptam tadasmakam balam bhishmabhirakshitam paryaptam tvida me tesham balam bhimabhirakshitam. Again he wants to reassure himself. So he says, our army is bigger and protected by the great Bhishma, who is the commander-in-chief, whereas the opposite army, though protected by Bhima, they can be easily overwhelmed. So just to reassure himself, he wants to say that his army is bigger, which was true also. He had a bigger army than the Pandavas, and he had all these great warriors with him. But still, he needed this reassurance for himself, because in spite of all this, deep within, he was still not, he still had that fear. So this generally shows that people who don't follow dharma, they talk outwardly, but deep within they know they are not following dharma. In fact, there is a story about Duryodhana, you must have heard probably. So somebody asked Duryodhana, you know why you follow adharma? Why do you you follow adharma? So don't you know what dharma is? So Duryodhana had said, I know what dharma is, but it is my nature to do adharma. So I cannot go against my nature. So it is not that Duryodhana didn't know what he was doing was wrong, but he was driven by his instincts, his basic nature, which happens to all of us. I mean, not as this thing as Duryodhana, but generally some things we do because it comes automatically to us, because it's our nature. Though we know something is wrong, sometimes some people tend to lie, some people tend to do some things which they know they should not do, but it comes out because it is their nature. So they have to make an extra effort to change themselves. So probably by saying this, Duryodhana was just trying to reassure himself that he had a bigger army, so definitely they could defeat the opposite army. So this is the inference we can get from what Duryodhana said. The next verse, Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yata bhagamavastitah bhishme vabhirakshantu bhavantah sarva evahi. So now he tells everybody to get into their positions to ensure that they all protect Bhishma, because Bhishma was the commander-in-chief, as you know. So he felt it was important to protect Bhishma from all sides, because if Pandavas got near Bhishma and something happened to him, his army will lose morale. So he wanted to give that indication to all the others that your main duty is to protect Bhishma. Now, to be honest, Bhishma didn't need any protection. Probably he could handle the entire army by himself, the entire opposition army he could handle by himself, because he was a master at everything. But again, it shows the insecurity of Duryodhana. So that is why he addresses everyone to get into their positions and ensure that Bhishma is protected from all sides. So this was the message given by Duryodhana to all the warriors in his army. So up to this, we have seen Duryodhana's, you can say, his assessment of both sides of our armies. We can also sense his insecurity, his fears, because he himself says he has a bigger army, but still deep within he still had this insecurity that the other army, if they got near Bhishma and something happened to Bhishma, then his army will collapse. So we can sense his insecurity through these verses, and it also gives us an idea of what the strengths and weaknesses of both the armies. Now, hearing all this, what happens next? The next verse, Tassa sanjanayan harsha kuru vriddha pitamaha simhanadam vinadauschaih shankham dadmau pratapavan. Now probably Bhishma sensed Duryodhana's insecurity. He had no doubt about his own ability. He knew he was invincible because he also had this boon of dying whenever he wished. So he did not have any fear of death. And he was capable of, he could handle the entire opposition army, like I said, on his own. He had that capability. So he, watching Duryodhana talking and saying all these things, he decided now he should get into action. So he let out a great roar, like a lion. He roared and then blew his conch, signaling the start of the war. So he blew his conch loudly just to reassure Duryodhana that I am here, and that roar he let out just to give a indication to the opposition that I am ready for the war, so that the opposition also, hearing his roar and the blowing of his conch, they all must have got a little nervous. So this happens even when we, even in a cricket match, we watch nowadays we have analysts who study the strength and weaknesses of each team. So similarly, and they have this huddle where they come and they talk about what to do, and so the opposition gets, oh, these people have some secret, so they are going to come at us and defeat us. They have got some special weapons to. So this is what happens even in today's context. You take like a cricket match also, these things happen. So by blowing the conch and letting out a roar, Bhishma, one thing he wanted to reassure Duryodhana that he was ready, and he also wanted to give a message to the opponents that yes, I am ready for the war, so you be prepared, because they also knew the greatness of Bhishma. So this is what is the stage again set, which we will continue in the next class.